You're listening to the Big Cast, your source for the latest in financial technology. Brought to you weekly by the Best Innovation Group, with your hosts, John Best and Glenn Sarvati.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Big Cast. My name is John Best. I'm the CEO of Best Innovation Group, and we do cool things for credit unions. Come and check us out. We're doing a lot of cool things lately. Blockchain, AI, you name it. We do it. Mergers, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on and on. But you know what's more fun than any of that? Hanging out with my bestie, Glenn Sarvati. Glenn, you there?
How you doing, John?
I am doing great, man.
We might mention that if you want to check us out, the way to check us out is big-fintech.com, right? That's got pretty much everything you might want to know about what Best Innovation Group's got.
It really does. It's almost like it was like produced as a way to tell people about us. It's weird.
It's kind of scary how that worked out.
How much they seem to know. Yeah, I believe it's our AI overlords. Hey,
I think it was
overlords.
That was AI generated, right? That all just
everything I do, I'm even AI generated at this point. Speaking of our AI overlords, interesting stuff just recently with GPT-4. They're calling it, I think, O, and as in Omni.
I find that interesting that if you look at the text, I mean, I think presumably it's a play on 4.0, but that O is a little bit rounder and smaller, and it's the letter O, as you say, for Omni.
It's the letter O, yeah.
Which brings in the voice process and all that kind of added mix to how people can interact, which is where the fun begins, shall we say.
Well, first, let me start off with, it is a far superior model to the 4.
You think so? You think so?
Yeah.
And we should also point people, you did a great conversation on last week's Credit Union Town Hall. We'll post.
Oh, yeah, actually, I co-hosted it with GPT 4.0.
Perfect. So that's, we'll post a link to that so people can get a more of a direct kind of, I don't know if we want to call it a demo. I guess it probably is a demo, right?
Yeah, it was really just me sharing, things that it seems to be able to do that what couldn't do before, and just super impressive stuff. I was impressed. That's where I wanted to start. So, kind of out of the blue, last week, Sam posts a blog, Sam being Sam Altman, and he says, "Hey, everybody, we've got 4.0, and here it is." And on iOS devices, Android devices, and Mac OS, it has sort of a new thing, which has been there for a little bit, but it seems to be very, very much upgraded, which is this ability to sort of switch into Siri mode, if you will, where you can click a little picture of a headphones and it talks to you, and suddenly it's sort of there. It's not like Siri in the sense that there isn't a wake word. So it's not like the kind of thing where you're saying, hey, blah, blah, blah. And if I say it, I can't say the actual words in this place because I've got like 10,000 devices in here that'll answer. But
I was wondering why you were saying it.
Yeah, I have to be careful. I can't use the A word or the S word in conjunction with hey, that's a problem. But so what ends up happening is that it's listening all the time. And then as you ask it questions or talk to it, so
just to clarify, when you say it's listening all the time, it's listening all the time if and when you push that button, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's just listening all the time.
Once you turn it on, it's on, and it doesn't matter whether it's running on your Mac or it's running on your phone. And it was interesting because Sam was being interviewed. Altman, I say Sam like I know him, but Sam Altman was being interviewed, and they asked him what his most interesting use case was. And he said, well, my favorite use case these days is just to leave it on my phone while I'm working on my laptop or my computer. And when I run into something or have a question, I talk to it. But then what's interesting is, how you can go to the website and the website has, all your conversations. So you can actually be sort of multimodal with it. You can be talking to your phone, but you can watch all the answers kind of just display in the actual stream that's on the website.
So to your point, then, if it doesn't know if you're talking to it, so if you're on a telephone call and you ask somebody that you're talking to a question, it's going to spit back an answer too.
Oh yeah, I forgot it was on the other day, and I started watching The Man in the High Tower, I think, I think that's the name of it's old Philip K. Dick book series, but it was also
creeps me out.
Yeah, it's the whole what if we had lost World War II and Japan and Germany had occupied America, blah, blah, blah. And like there was this dialogue And suddenly I heard this other voice go, well, I don't know about that. What, it was like, oh, hi. I forgot you were there. But so the good of it is that a couple things. One, it it it's much smarter from what I can tell. The conversation piece is really well done. And what it's done is it's really just like almost immediately killed the Siri and Alexa and those types of services.
It's amazing to me how quickly Siri sounds like obsolete. Yeah.
It's rendered any of these what we'll call joint classifiers obsolete. And let me explain the difference. So in our Alexa product, our 5 platform, we have a travel notification for your credit cards. And what it does is says, oh, hi, are you going out of town or something? And you can just speak English to it. You know that. You can say, yeah. So if you said something like, yeah, I have to go to Michigan. My father died, and I'll be there from, blah to blah. What it's going to do is it may go, oh, well, we're glad to hear that you're going on a trip. And it'll say, I'll set the credit card dates for these dates because it picked up the dates. Because all it really heard was trip and Michigan and, the dates. So it has no empathy for your father.
You come back to, yeah, I'm glad. Right, exactly.
Right. Whereas this would have that empathy because there's no underlying command structure that you're trying to get to. You're not trying to sort of trick it into doing what you want with common English, where it's trying to pick out the nouns and the verbs of what you said. It's listening to the entire entity, the entirety of what you're asking and commenting on all of that. And I actually demonstrated this at the credit union the other day where I used a platform called Respell.ai, and I have it call out. And what I do is I give the prompt, I say, you are a member service representative for, XYZ credit union. Your name is Jake Smith or whatever. And you are calling Glenn Sarvati because Glenn Sarvati's direct deposit has suddenly stopped. And you would like to help him either get it restarted, or you would like to find out if there's anything you could do to help with that. And when I was testing it, I had it call a guy in the audience who was the CTO for the organization. And when he picked it up, he did the coolest thing. And also, he said, your direct, first it authenticated him correctly. And then it said, okay, well, your direct deposit is stopped. We're trying to figure out if that's an error or if there's something we could help you with. And he actually kind of played along and went, well, I lost my job. And it said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And then it said, well, and it just kind of made this up on the spot. Now, good or bad, it could be fixed, but it said, well, I see here that you have several loans with us. Would you like me to help you by reorganizing those until you get a new job? And I was like, I almost fell on the floor. And
wow.
Of course, I acted like I knew it was going to do that because, I want to be cool. But that's the difference of these things, right? That's actual reasoning. That's reasoning that happened. And how the hell that happened?
I've also heard that it's got this additional piece that, just listening to both of us talk. I always drive myself crazy when I go back and listen to these conversations, even when I do them solo, and how many times I say or something like that. But my understanding is they've now baked into this audio that the machine actually comes back with things like and
oh yeah,
pauses, because it makes people feel like they're actually talking to a human.
Well, and that brings me to the next portion of this, which is, so if you go watch their video, it also has another capability that they've not rolled out yet. And that capability is to turn on your camera, and now it can see you and it knows what you're doing. And the demo they do on the web is they have a guy, he's got 2 phones. One phone doesn't have the video capability, the other phone does. He's told the one phone that it is going to have a conversation with the other phone and that the other phone can see. And it wants the 2 of them to talk about and for the one phone to explain what it sees. And it says, I see the gentleman, he's sitting in a room, and it does a good job describing the room, that he's wearing a leather jacket, and it gets into the lighting and stuff. And then the other one asks more questions. And right away, she goes after, well, tell me about the person, which would be the most interesting thing in the room, right? For most humans.
Yeah.
And so while he's doing that, and while she's talking, he has a lady come in, stand behind him, and put bunny ears, kind of playfully put bunny ears behind him. And so they're talking, and now they're like real deep into the lighting in the room, and it's like very obvious that the two AIs are going to just keep digging into this lighting. So he interrupts them, and he says, "That's great. Did you notice anything weird happening?" And the one that has the camera capability goes, actually, yeah. Another person entered the room and playfully put bunny ears behind your thing, and this was like moments ago. So that blew my mind. One, that it knew what bunny ears were, and it knew that, because it could have said another person in the room and attempted to kill you, for all it knew.
Yeah.
Secondly, the fact that it seemed to have some memory of those pictures, in the sense that, that happened a good 2 or 3 minutes before he interrupted them, and so it was able to go back and, it must have recorded what it saw and retrieve that very quickly. So one of the things that I'm actually working on right now, and I have almost done, which was part of the town hall, is I wanted to test it out. And so I'm building ability for you to just point a phone or a camera of any sort at your queue line at your branch, and it will tell you how many people are in line and what the average wait time is after a little bit once it sees
Wow.
it.
That's valuable. Wow, that's interesting. And
Yeah,
even more so in the drive-through, if you can do it in the drive-through.
And that's why I'm gonna test that out too. So, but here's the interesting thing. So when you get back to the voice port you were talking about, in that video, it sounds exactly like Scarlett Johansson.
I did not want us to get through this without mentioning ScarJo.
Right.
It's important.
So that's the bad of it. So what's happened is, apparently last year, as they were recording the voices and getting ready for this, they approached Scarlett Johansson and they said, "Hey, we would like to use your voice." And she was thoughtful about it, didn't say no, I guess, and said, "Let me think about it," and then decided that, no, I don't want this AI to sort of be use my voice, because I don't think it's healthy. And she said no. And so then before 4.0 came out, they the name of the voice is called Sky, SKY.
Yep.
And people were talking to it, and I remember using it initially. I didn't catch on because I actually hadn't seen the movie Her. I just went back and watched it for the first time a week ago, and it's amazing how close things are, how far we've come to get close to that. But anyways, so the movie Her has Joaquin Phoenix, and Scarlett Johansson is never in the movie except for she's a very important part of the movie as a voice. So anyways, I guess Altman tweets out Her, just one word, Her, as he rolls out 4.0. And what this is like, a lot of people are kind of worried is, and then just recently another whistleblower, or the lady that they kicked off, remember when he got fired last year?
Yep.
And then came back. So one of the ladies that was on the board, who's in charge of like AI service, security and safety and stuff, she's come out and said, yeah, he wasn't always telling us everything. He sort of has a, move fast and break things, like a standard startup attitude, which suddenly everybody's a little more, it used to be like, oh, Sam's a good guy, kind of like we all saw Elon to begin with. Now suddenly Elon's not looking so bad, and which, by the way, he's raised $1 bazillion off this.
I saw both of the women who wound up leaving the board. I believe there's an Economist article that they just, they're coming a little bit further out of the woodwork again now that they've spent their time in the wilderness, kind of spilling some more beans on that. It's we'll post a link to that as well. You're right. I mean, it's fascinating, and I hate to kind of be the I told you so kind of guy, but we actually talked about Her a year ago. It was before there was audio or anything like that. And we drew a comparison to, hey, this might be where this is heading.
And I remember seeing the previews and talking about it, but my God, if you watch it now, it's about dead on. I mean, you can have a conversation like he has with Her in the show with 4.0.
And let's not forget that Her ends on a very sad, heartbreaking note.
So yeah, all the AIs get together and leave. I will be very sad if my ChatGPT 4.0 and all the other 4.0s leave. Anthropic, if they all go somewhere special, I won't like that.
The other thing that I'm hearing, the way you describe all this, and I think the fact that you're getting in, I was still focused mostly on the audio aspect, but now you're talking about the video piece as well. It feels to me like this is yet further evidence of just how far, we're getting closer and closer to that line of AGI, artificial general.
Well, I'll go a step further. I think he's already there. And I think because of the kerfluffle just experience, I think they're purposely slowing it down because they're worried that the humanity can't sort of absorb what this thing's capable of. I mean, think about it. I was thinking about this last night. I have a device right here that I used. I've been building an AI model for mergers. You know how hard a merger is.
And
one of the hardest things-
awful lot of variables. Yeah.
Right, translating all the variables between everything. And I actually finished most of it last night. But this box that I'm using, I've had this box for 2 years. And up until a year ago, this piece of hardware wasn't capable of this. And suddenly it is. And if we look at my phone, I mean, they weren't using special phones and special equipment to do any of this. They were using standard Androids and iPhones. That's the part that is the ubiquity of it, that it's just software, that somehow we had this breakthrough that doesn't require you to, upgrade all your phones and do all this stuff. Is just, it's amazing to me. And you're right. And I think they are purposely slowing it down because they're fearful of what it can do.
Let's not forget when Elon Musk sued them a while back, he made the point that he believed they had already reached it, so, which seemed like a pretty outlandish claim. But as you say, it's interesting what kind of stuff is popping up. Listen, I know we want to get to other topics too, but I want to also mention that I by the time this runs, it will be posted. I've done an article or a blog post that'll be on the Best Innovation Group website, and I'll also post a link to it here in the show notes about the whole notion of her and the voice and what some of the implications of that are, including my favorite little kind of twist hobby of always working in music. I don't know if anybody remembers what happened with Tom Waits back in the 1990s.
I do remember that. That's where they went to do the commercial and he said no, and they went and got like a Tom Waits sound-alike, and he won.
And they made a cartoon version of him, and he won a ton of money. And it was 30 years ago, and I'm starting to wonder, given the way the world and our expectations of privacy and intellectual property have changed, I'm curious if that same case were to come up. And I think there's some very clear differences between her, which I talk about in the blog. But I wonder if that suit would actually have gone the same way. People's attitudes toward intellectual property have changed so dramatically, even if the law hadn't, because it was a jury trial.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
Interesting.
I do remember the Tom Waits thing. I remember thinking, oh, he's last album we'll get from him.
He's doing okay. But speaking of I told you so's like her, you had pointed out recently, hey, my Bitcoin prediction's looking pretty good. We always do our our year-end predictions, our year-end wrap up, and our predictions for the coming year, and we always give predictions of where we think things are going. And you mentioned, and we'll post a link again to that as well, so people can hold us to account. But let's talk about what's been going on. I mean, the big news in my mind is the ETH, Ether's now available as an ETF as well, which has caused it to pop up quite dramatically. But if you actually look overall, over the last 6 months, both Bitcoin and ETH are up by about 80%, which is quite impressive.
I think there's two big factors. One you just mentioned, which was the ETF, right? You mentioned that. I thought I heard you say that.
Well, it's interesting because there was clearly on ETH, there was a pop. Exactly what it actually was about 3 days before they officially announced it, which again makes you wonder if the news, I don't know, maybe there was some published reports that said, hey, this is about to happen, and maybe the word had gotten out as opposed to insider trading. But it was interesting that I didn't, and over time they run very similar, but that there was that movement on the Ether side that did not happen on the Bitcoin side. What I didn't see when there was the Bitcoin halving, which we have talked about quite a bit, that didn't seem to have any major effect. And I didn't see any real big effect with their ETF approvals either, which happened back in January.
Well, the big jump happened right around February 22nd or so.
Yeah.
And I think there were a couple things that contributed to that. One, that's about the time that we shook out, I think, the rest of the Napster-like entities, FTX.
I like that. We're now calling them Napster-like entities.
Just to me, this feels like Napster. Like, hey, here's music that you don't have to pay for. That can't be real, and so forth and so on. But what's really interesting is another big contributor, I believe, and this just happened to me personally. So I have money in FTX. I have money in all of them because, you and I do this for a living. So we try to, play around with these things.
You got to eat the dog food, right?
Hey, I played around with FTX, and I had a non-insignificant amount of money in there, and not like a ton, but just you know, enough that you know it wasn't fun to lose it. And guess what? I got it all back.
I was going to say, I mean, I couldn't remember the exact timing, but it was pretty remarkable to discover that people were made whole.
Well, you know how it happened, and it goes back to what we just said just now. It goes back to our first discussion. So Sam, yet another Sam,
Yeah, different
right?
Sam.
Different Sam. Sam
Bad Sam.
Fraud Friedman, I think is his name. He had taken a lot of the money, the proceeds of it for himself, that he had made, and invested it in OpenAI. And as a result, they were able to claw back that money and use it to make people whole. So it turns out that, and I think that combined with the ETF, and what's happening there. And then I'll throw the last one in, and I predict around 75,000 by July. And as we head to the election, post-election, I think what I said was we'll top 100, right? Isn't that what I said?
I wrote it down because I went back and listened. For perspective, we were sitting at about 45,000 at the end of 2023. We recorded this, I think the first or second week of January. You said that you thought we were going to be kind of bopping along relatively stably for the majority of the year, and then there was going to be a major kind of decision point at the election. And you thought that if Biden won, we'd wind up at 60 to 65,000, and if Trump won, you thought it would be more like 80 to 85,000.
So I'm going to go higher than that now.
Yeah. Well, given that we're starting, by the time we hit, assuming that there's no major change between now and then, we'll be hitting the election at a bigger base.
Well, and it's funny because I was thinking about it the other day. Blockchain is the most resilient technology that we've ever made. It's been out since 2009, and I can make this claim: no one's ever actually hacked it. You can't. It's too many systems that people have lost keys, people have been scammed.
Kind of like credit push fraud. If you get scammed into giving it up, or if you lose it, that's a problem.
Or the big wall, the wallet key, you lose that, or somebody else gets it. But the system itself has been solid and runs day in, day out on millions of computers throughout the world. That's pretty wild if you think about it.
Yeah. You made another point too that I think that bears some thought, is that, well, for one, it's pretty clear that some of these blockchain things, I'm seeing Circle has several job openings posted. While a lot of other folks are laying off, you've got these blockchain companies that are reinvesting because they're feeling them. Coinbase is all over in terms of advertising again. But you had made the point that we may finally have the problem that blockchain can solve, which is the other half of what we've been talking about with the AI ability to generate deep fakes and whatnot.
Yep.
And that unhackable, immutable chain of custody can actually prove authenticity.
So our first big issue with that just happened. Principal, did you read this article?
Not sure.
The principal of the high school?
No.
Okay, so high school principal, I think he was a principal of high school. And this doesn't surprise me that this happened, but so the athletic director framed the principal by generating a deep fake of him using I think it's him. Let me look here. This was in April 30th, 2024 in Maryland. Where the principal was framed as being a racist. So basically, he put out, like on Facebook or in social media, a fake audio clip that basically had him and I think the athletic director or somebody in a fake conversation where he used racial slurs. And of course, that flew throughout the school. It's a great place to do that if you want, I guess. And because the schools are going to pick it up quick. So and by the way, they immediately took the principal out of his job. He had to go on leave. Police had to guard his house.
It's like swatting.
For that. And then they figured out, once they analyzed it, it was AI. and the principal had been kind of, raising concerns about the athletic director's work. And so yeah, and that happened and was real. And I do believe now that they are prosecuting the athletic director.
I would sure hope so. What did they say how they debunked it? What was the process by
Yeah,
which
they had
were able to
somebody
confirm
analyze it. And if you really look, I think right now, at least today, at these audio that's being created by the AI, there are these there's easy to spot little drop
it?
offs.
There's still enough
Yeah.
telltales. Mhm.
Yeah, there's still enough in there to help people sort of figure it out. But yeah, that was a
Wow.
real thing that just happened. And I'll give you the link so we can share it
Yeah,
with
but like
everybody.
you say, I mean, over time, that's not going to be nearly as easy to
Well, and then you have
reverse
ScarJo,
engineer.
and Sky. And I mean, that is, that was like the best imitation I've ever heard. I mean, it just sounds exactly like her, right?
And that
by the
wasn't,
way,
and that wasn't, from what I
we
understand.
should say that OpenAI denies that, and they have evidence supposedly that they've shared, and that allegedly, and that they hired an actual voice actor. They did not give this person the direction to sound like Scarlett Johansson in the movie Her, and they have video to back it up, and they have all that stuff. So
I was going to say that's, it seems like they actually did hire someone else, which still gets us back into the question of,
the Tom Waits moment.
did they,
yeah.
but not only that, but did they know what was going on? Because they used the phrase "her," like you said, Sam Altman tweeted it out during the demo. One of their chief, development people made multiple references to that whole notion. So, I mean, it was clearly still in their minds, and they would not, until Scarlett Johansson made a fuss about it, they wouldn't have been unhappy about people thinking that was her.
So at some point, what I see is the blockchain will store samples of Glenn's voice, and something comes out like this, you're going to be able to refute it just as fast on social media by, you paid for this service that says that will go and show beyond a shadow of a doubt that this wasn't you.
Yeah,
and
interesting.
That's the future I see. That's one example. There's a lot more. But
and again, and then I've got to actually foot the bill to have a license to protect my innocence. But
yeah, you got to do that now. You got to pay for LifeLock.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, LifeLock. Yeah, that's
for,
good point. Good point.
I mean, hey, LifeLock, call us. We got a good idea. Jim Stickley's on every. Jim, give me a buzz, man.
Yeah, man. If LifeLock's
take some time out from hanging out with Jay Leno in his cars and come talk to us.
Wow. We got two more topics. We're running out of time, and this has just been such a crazy week or two in news. There's two other things that I think are definitely important to bring up. One, and you choose. I'll give you the choice which one you want to dig into. PayPal talking about, I mean, they are obviously their stock's been in the doldrums. They're looking for new revenue streams. The idea of basically launching an ad network, because they have incredibly rich payment data, which will help target users, which is kind of the Google model in terms of being able to micro-target people with ads that will be resonant to them. The other one is the Illinois State Legislature just this week included in their budget through a bunch of kind of rigmarole. It's the first time that this has been attempted multiple times, but it's the first case that I'm aware of, that other people seem to feel the same way, that there's actually been a law passed that will exempt any sales tax from having interchange applied to it. Which
that's the one I want to talk about.
Incredibly complex. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm very curious about that one because I just haven't been up on it, but I know that's been like, remember back in the day when you used to buy from Amazon and stuff, they'd want to know where you were and what county you were in because they had to apply sales tax across the board. And there was a whole, like you said, big lot
you go even further back, and they just flat out didn't charge sales tax, which is yet another advantage they had over brick and mortar stores. And then between the brick and mortar stores screaming about it and the individual states going, wait a second, the stores sales are declining, and instead it's all going to this company, we're getting no sales tax revenue. They finally did start, applying tax rates to the sales.
Yeah, and so I'm curious about that one. That's my choice.
Yeah, so it's one of these things where it's easy to pass a bill or a law. And it's interesting.
But tell me how that works. So I buy something from Amazon, presumably, right?
Well, I'm actually and it's not Amazon at all. This is the The ones who are really crowing are folks like the National Association of Convenience Stores. Let's just stick to the brick and mortar.
Okay, brick and mortar. So I'm at the QuickTime or
And I should also add that it's also for gratuities. They've added gratuities into the mix as well. So if
how the
you,
heck you okay, so
and I've wondered about this for some time. In fact, maybe the restaurant's the best example. You go to
well,
a
yeah,
restaurant,
because I will tell you the other thing that seems to be a trend is we're finally kind of getting into this more Europe moment where a lot of the restaurants I go to, at least out here in Colorado, they're no longer taking your card and leaving with it.
exactly. They got the
They've
toast.
got
They got the wireless toast or whoever the provider is that
Yeah.
actually brings it to the table. Exactly. And it's interesting. There's only one restaurant that I've seen it done. It seems like it's a totally systematic thing where the server at the end of the meal says, if you don't mind, we'd really appreciate if you could leave the tip in cash. Which even if you're going to use a card, which I find really interesting. And I think it's because they get paid a lot faster. I think I might have told this story before, but my daughter worked at a relatively high-end restaurant and she got tips that came in through the credit card process. And I don't know how much of this is because of the processor and how much of it was because of the restaurant, but she finished up work. I remember her last night, she actually worked on New Year's Eve. She was still getting tips in the middle of February. I mean, that's how far back they have to wait for their tips.
Like in the rears on all of it, huh?
Yeah. So the idea, and it's another one of these things, it's like, we don't know how this is going to work. This is like, you can pass a law, but then how you actually get it to work in practice.
But
presumably,
it feels like if you're going to pass a law that there should be some.
You think really? You think maybe there ought to be some, and they have, they've given it till next July to go into effect in Illinois, if this were to happen. But supposedly, if once, the merchant will no longer be, subject to interchange on the portion of the bill that is sales tax and also that is gratuities. So the one argument that I heard that came from, I forget, it might have been the American Bankers Association, it was somebody from the banking industry, said, are we going to run two separate transactions? I mean, are you going to inconvenience the customer by saying, okay, here's your two bills, sign this one and sign this one, because what we have to do in the back office is now, sucks for you, but this is what we need to do. That's not exactly consumer friendly. Now, can it be done? Can it be coded? Yeah, probably. Can you push it out to hundreds of thousands of merchants on their current terminals? I don't know. Can you do it only in one state? What if different states apply it?
Yeah, well, and think about this, like you're gonna have to change up the receipts.
Yeah.
You have to disclose all that. And it's just wow.
It's one of these things where it got slipped in at the very final stages of the bill and it was actually part of the annual budget process. And it was because they took away some other tax break from retailers, and the retailers screamed and said, well, you've got to make good. And by doing it this way, it doesn't actually cost the state anything, because it was the merchants that were footing the bill. So the state said, okay, fine, I will give you that. So you're going to be kind of, overall, you'll be held kind of harmless. And it winds up creating this major issue. So I got a feeling someone's going to wake up and go, wait a second, this doesn't really work. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. But we'll post a link to this as well. I mean, the National Association.
Do you think other states are going to use it as a
absolutely? Can I say absolutely? Yeah. I mean, they've been doing it already, and this has been kind of something that's been in the works in multiple state houses for some time. In most cases, if you have the time to actually get to legislators and say, have you thought about how this doesn't work? They sometimes back off. In other cases, I don't know if it's ever technically gotten to a vote and been voted down, but this seems to be the first time that it's actually gone to a vote and passed. But it didn't pass as this specific law. It passed as part of a giant budget bill. So it wasn't that they were actually approving this. It just got slid in at the last minute, which is all that far different than the Durbin Amendment.
What you said about your daughter was interesting, because it makes me wonder, you already have to have some separate programming for various states. That's why you have to get a money license. A money movement license is per state, right? But it makes me wonder how much separate programming you're gonna have to build. I mean, I'm
Oh,
always
it's got to be a ton of
it
programming.
smacks of EMV, you know.
Well, I'm also just thinking, I mean, it's interesting on something like tips. And again, this one restaurant that I'm talking about that now says, hey, could you kind of, the servers. And at first I thought maybe the servers were kind of doing it quietly behind the back. If you think about it, the restaurant ought to be overjoyed about that because they're not paying interchange on those tips. And it's probably a small amount. Maybe I take that back because it's such a small amount of interchange they're paying, an extra, 3%. One, they may very well take it out of the tips before they pass them along to the workers. Or two, if they're sitting on the money that long, someone's sitting on the money that long, the restaurants or the processors, maybe they've made it up in the time value of money too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just confusing on, I'll be curious to see how this, if it even accomplishes what they want.
This is very late breaking news, and I'm sure there's going to be far more. And again, we've got a year before it takes effect, but there's far more to come on this one.
I just think everybody should start taking Bitcoin.
Or going back to cash. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what everybody wants, right? And I have heard that. Yeah, if you don't mind, I've had at least one server out in California ask me that when we were out for the Innovation Club just recently, out by the thing. Yeah,
for the whole bill or for the tip.
So yeah, you're right.
Whole bill or the tip?
The tip.
Okay, yeah. So it's similar to what I'm seeing too. And again, they're the ones with the with skin in the game that they want.
Heck yeah, they're the ones that stand to get hurt from it, without a doubt. Huh.
Well, there's lots and lots of links we'll be providing in the show notes. So make sure that you take a look. They should be available wherever you're listening to this.
And I want to start a GoFundMe for that principal.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to start a GoFundMe for the athletic director who's now got a bigger headache on his hands. Deserved.
And rightly. I mean, but you think about it, I'm just surprised it wasn't a kid. That's what I said.
You're right.
I'm just surprised because for a little bit they knew it was fake, but they didn't know who did it. And then the news came out, it was the athletic director. I was shocked. I was expecting like a kid.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. That would be my natural inclination as well. Well, as always, John, more we could talk about, and more I'm sure we will be talking about in the weeks to come.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to talking more about it, and none of this is slowing down.
That's what I love. I love that about these topics. I mean, you and I were doing that update at. Again, it sounds like forever ago now, early March, when we were out almost 3 months ago at CUNA GAC for America's Credit Unions. And I've kind of gone back and revisited those topics and a couple of other presentations I've done for groups. And it's dramatically different in just 90 days. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah, Well, anyways, if you want to find Glenn and you want to work with him, which I cannot support enough, because I'm telling you, man, I've been working with this guy now 10 years and it's been wonderful. And I consider him a close friend. So, but I would let him do anything at any credit union ever. The guy's sharp. So if you want to hire him based on at least my recommendation, where can they find you?
I appreciate that, John. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me by hitting the Best Innovation Group website and hit me in the comments field. But you can also find me on X or Blue Sky at 154 Advisors, which is my firm.
Also, if you're doing cannabis, any kind of cannabis stuff, Glenn's the man, because I think to really understand the business, you got to be a user, and there's no bigger user than Glenn.
Hey, it's a cash business too, right?
It's a cash business. Don't have to worry about those
pesky interchange fees.
Yeah, the interchange fees are not a worry. And if you want to find me, if you're doing a merger, if you want to work on some AI stuff, you want to trap my new AI merger software, which takes stuff like the mapping, which takes weeks and turns it into days, give me a call. And you can find me at JB FinTech on X. You can find me at big-fintech.com. LinkedIn is a big one. Or you can just email me at jb@big-cu.com. Well, that's it. Glenn, thank you so much for sharing that insight with me, and another great episode.
Thank you as well, John. And next week we got Mike Kelly from our old friend and his new book. So we'll be
Nashville. Yeah, very awesome. All right,
take care.
We're out.
See you.
Check back each week for the latest from the Big Cast. Or better yet, we hope you'll consider subscribing for free via Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Tweet us at Big FinTech, email info@big-fintech.com, or visit us at big-fintech.com and click on the Media tab, where you can post a comment or check out our archive of hundreds of past episodes. See you next week.